and elsewhere. By the way, speaking of the Iran deal, now I know you all remember I have spent considerable time detailing and explaining how the Obama administration spied on domestic opponents of the Iran deal, and that was the forerunner of the attempt to spy on Trump transition and campaign people, and how the Obama administration used a new alliance between intelligence community people and media to advance the mythology and lies about the Iran deal. And when they saw how easy it was to compromise the media in pushing the phony Iran deal narrative of the Obama administration, that essentially became the trial run for what we are going through now with the intelligence community having an alliance with the media to leak a bunch of absolute drivel about Trump for a year and a half and 2 years to try to shape public opinion. I'm going to go back and I'm going to review all of that. When it comes to the Iran deal, I'm going to go back and review a whole bunch of things from the past that we touched on when they came out that everybody has forgotten, that detail just how rotten this deal was to begin with, that also detail how the Obama administration virtually lied to the American people about it, and did so with the assistance of the media and the new alliance between the media and the Obama intelligence apparatus. It's a fascinating story, and it's going to just nuke to smithereens all of these people that are in a conniption fit over this. And if you look at these people, it does raise a question. I don't care where you go. John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, who I think needs to be given a breathalyzer test after 9 o'clock every night if she's going to start tweeting things. But you take wherever you go, Obama, John Kerry, Hillary, everybody in the Obama administration are reacting to this Iran deal like they have lost something huge. It gives the impression that there's more involved here in just an Obama policy being reversed. It's almost like there's something that was personal at stake here that has been taken away from them. And, I mean, it's more so than usual. They're more upset than just, they were mad at the attempts to repeal and replace Obamacare, for example. And they had their little things to say about that. But this is engendering a completely different reaction from them. But I can't wait to get to the history of this with all of the stories we had about how bad this is and how bad the Obama administration was lying to people about the Iran deal. It is one of these things that I'm thinking about starting with. Well, I guess I essentially have. The thing to remember, I want to read you a statement Ben Sasse. U.S. Senator Ben Sasse, he's from Nebraska. He issued a statement following the president's announcement yesterday getting out of the Iran deal. The Iran deal has always been terrible. Today is a reminder that if you live by the presidency, you die by the presidency. We ought to be clear about this. Donald Trump is not ripping up a treaty. He is walking away from Barack Obama's personal pledge. 2.5 years ago, President Obama made a bad deal with Iran without support from Congress. Today, President Trump is pulling out of Obama's personal commitment, and he doesn't need Congress's support to do it because Congress had nothing to do with authorizing this. Obama did this personally. Obama never had the votes in the U.S. Congress to get this ratified as a treaty, so Obama did it by way of executive action. And that's the only reason Trump is able to rip it up the way he has. If this had been sanctioned and authorized as a treaty by the United States Senate, Trump could not have done what he did yesterday. The key to remember is that Obama never had the support, even of prominent people in his own party. Chuck Schumer, Steve Israel, a number of liberal Democrats in the House as well as in the Senate were never supportive of this Iran deal. It would have never passed the treaty vote in the Senate, And so that's why Sass is saying this is nothing more than a personal promise from Obama. But presidents cannot commit the United States to treaty-like positions simply because they do so with their personal word. It's another instance where Obama didn't have the votes of the elected representatives of the people to enact what he wanted to enact, so he did it by virtue of executive action and executive order. And because he did it that way, Trump, like so many other Obama things which were enacted over the heads of the elected representatives of the people, Trump can simply erase them with a subsequent executive action or executive order. I'm telling you, if this had been a treaty and the Senate had ratified it, Trump could not have done what he did yesterday. He would have had to go back to the Senate, had to reverse the process all over. It would have been practically impossible to do because of the number of votes required even to ratify a treaty. But as such, he didn't need the support of Congress. He didn't need the support of the Senate. And Ben Sass says American foreign policy makes lasting progress when it is led by the president, approved by Congress, and presented honestly to the American people. This was not presented honestly to the American people. The Obama administration lied about the details of this deal. And one of the architects of the deal, Ben Rhodes, ran around and bragged about how easy it was to lie both to the American people and American journalists. Ben Rhodes from Obama's national security apparatus made the comment your average journalist today is 27. They don't know anything. They believe everything we tell them. It was a snap. It was right out of the page of Jonathan Gruber, who was the architect of Obamacare, who, after it was signed into law, ran around the country bragging about how easy it was to lie to the American people about it, because the American people are essentially ignoramuses. So Obamacare, the Iran deal, you look at the tricks that they had to play in order to get Obamacare passed into law. Not one Republican vote for that. They had to use budget reconciliation for it to avoid the requirement for 60 votes. They had to play all kinds of games and employ all kinds of schemes to get Obamacare passed, which is one of the reasons it's been easy, relatively easy, to get rid of the individual mandate. Now, Congress did vote it, so Congress has to participate in the repeal, and various elements delayed that for 6 months, 9 months of Trump's term. The Republicans weren't sure he was going to survive, so they didn't want to support him on anything. When they finally figured out he was going to survive, they became a little bit more supportive. But really, Ben Rhodes running around bragging? I mean, this was even in the New York Post. John Podhoretz of the New York Post documented this extensively. We're going to go back and revisit this. For all of you who think this was some kind of great deal and there's been a big trick played, this country has been saved. This was a disastrous deal. One of the $150 billion that Obama pledged to Iran upon signing of the deal. Trump has made a big deal out of that $150 billion. And then, of course, there was another amount of money in cash that was delivered on an unmarked airplane to the Tehran airport, pallets of cash that were from Obama to the government of Iran, especially ostensibly for the release of American hostages. But one of the things that's not being commented on in all of this, and it's understandable when you hear it, do you know who one of Iran's most important allies is? Take a guess. Dun, 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 dun. Right, Russia. Russia is one of Iran's biggest allies. Do you know what one of Russia's primary foreign policy objectives has been for years and years and years? Dun, 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 dun. Right, an outpost in the Middle East. Guess what? They had it with Iran. Who has been supplying Iran largely, They're not the only ones, but who has been one of the majority players in supplying Iran with nuclear technology for weaponized nukes and nuclear power? Dun, 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 dun. Right, Russia. But wait a minute. I thought Russia and Trump colluded to steal the election from Hillary, which means that Trump would owe Russia, which means Trump would not pull out of this deal. But, dun, 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 right, Trump did pull out of the deal, screwing Russia. Guess why? The Russians were building a bunch of nuclear reactors and infrastructure for the Iranians. The Iranians weren't paying for it. The Iranians didn't have the money for it until Obama gave them the $150 billion. And John Kerry even admitted that a slice of that $150 billion would probably be used to fund terrorism. John Kerry, Secretary of State, admitted that some of the money we gave Iran would be used to fund terrorism. And they're trying to tell us that this was a great deal and that pulling out of this deal is going to put the United States at great risk. We were at great risk in this deal. Do you know? Do you remember? This Iran deal that Obama made had a clause requiring us to defend Iran if Iran were attacked, including if they were attacked by Israel. Trump has been talking about that since 2015, and has been one of the primary reasons Trump has wanted to pull out of this. Iran took that $150 billion and repaid the Russians for some of the nuclear infrastructure they had been building. Now, with the deal over, Iran has no more source of money, and with sanctions being employed on Iran, it's going to be even tougher for the Iranians to continue to do business with the Russians. So Trump has just, in addition to everything else, flipped a gigantic middle finger bird at the Russians. But wait, the Russians and Trump colluded to steal the election from Hillary, which would mean that Trump would be in the debt of the Russians. All of this is in the beginning stages of imploding. The Mueller investigation, all of this stuff, it's in the beginning stages of imploding. Let's go and a quick review of the election returns last night. Big blue wave, eh? By the way, folks, that $150 billion from Obama to Iran, it just didn't go to Russia. John Kerry admitted that some of it would be diverted to jihad. You know what that means? Terrorism. And so some of that Obama $150 billion, American $150 billion went to Syria. Went to the Taliban. It flowed to Hamas and Hezbollah for the war on Israel. It went to Yemen, where there's a proxy war going on against Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, is now part of the new Trump alliance with Israel. And then a lot of that money went to Russia to repay Russia, or to pay Russia, period, some of the nuclear infrastructure building that the Russians had done for the Iranians. So it's just an absolute outrage what the whole deal was in the first place. And the degree of outrage from these people in the Obama team who've now had it yanked away from them. Really, really curious. Look, I can understand being upset. Here's Obama, greatest president ever, first African-American president, believes America needs to be cut down in size. America is the problem in the world in many ways. It's not the solution. America has been unfair to smaller countries. So comes Obama to kind of level the playing field and promote globalism. And this one just yanked right out from under him. And these people in the Obama camp that had something to do with this are really taking this hard. They're taking it so hard, it's making me curious what they've lost here. What did Kerry lose personally in this? He's reacting to this more than just lost his credibility, reputation, or resume point. Ditto Hillary. Ditto Obama himself. What did they lose personally in this? And I don't have the answer, but I tell you what, I am deeply, deeply curious. Now, one of the things I predicted yesterday on this program, grab audio soundbite number 5, changing the order. I made a prediction on this program yesterday. After Trump's announcement he's pulling out of the Iran deal, this is what I said. I see where the left is going to take this. The president's decision. The left is going to say this is going to make it just impossible to do a deal with the North Koreans. It's going to be impossible because the Chi-Coms are part of the Iran deal. If we just unilaterally pull out, well, how can we be trusted to not pull out of the next deal if this is the way the United States is going to behave? So this is going to be really, really hard to do a deal with North Korea. Well, and I was right. That's exactly what they're saying. Let me give you a little evidence of that just to show. We have pencil neck Schiff last night with Wolf Blitzer on CNN. The question, President Trump's eager to strike a deal with the Norks over its nuclear program. How do you think Kim Jong-un is interpreting today's announcement by the president getting out of the Iran deal?
I think in a way this also strengthens Kim Jong-un's hand. Should there be dispute later on about whether North Korea is complying, and we have seen North Korea cheat in the future, will the U.S. have credibility given its track record on the Iran deal? So it weakens our position with North Korea. It makes North Korea.
Audio soundbite number 7, Jeff Flake. Also on CNN with Jake Tapper. Question, you're surely not surprised that he's doing what he said he would do. It's campaign promise, pull out of the Iran deal.
It's not good for the country at this point. Given where we are with negotiations now, especially with North Korea, our allies and our adversaries need to know that we are reliable. And I think that that's missing right now.
These people are so out of it. It's not a question of being reliable. It's a question of America's national interest being preserved and sponsored. Anyway, was I right or was I right? They're very worried now that this is going to weaken our position with the Norks because we're not reliable. Somebody explain to me how it is that the Secretary of State Pompeo ended up in North Korea and is returning with 3 American hostages that were released after we pulled out of the Iran deal. Would somebody explain to me how this has weakened our position? If our position had been weakened by pulling out of the Iran deal, then the pot-bellied little dictator Kim Jong-un would have told Pompeo, sorry, you're going home empty-handed. We don't think you're reliable anymore. We don't think you're Is this not a joke? A bunch of communist pinkos telling us we're not reliable, and that's what Flake and Pencilneck actually believe. That means that Kim Jong-un would have said to Pompeo, sorry, you know what? We are deeply offended. You pulled out of the Iran deal, and now we're not going to release your hostages. And we may even cancel our negotiations with you. That's what would have happened if these clowns were right. But they aren't right. They haven't been right for who knows how long. Classic example, inside the Beltway, conventional wisdom. They all say the same thing. It didn't matter where you turned the TV on last night. Oh, this is very bad. We've just damaged our credibility. We've damaged our reliability. We've damaged our trustworthiness. It's going to be very difficult to make another deal. Our European allies are going to be very, very concerned now. Our European allies wouldn't be alive to be our allies if it weren't for us. And if they are attacked down the road, it is us who will come to their defense yet again, which they know. All that's happened here is that the global world order crowd, which counts the Washington establishment as members, has just been told to go pound sand. And a common sense decision to not pay for and permit the world's state sponsor of terrorism to get a nuclear weapon has just been asserted. And somehow that doesn't make any sense. Keeping nuclear weapons out of the world's state sponsor of terrorism, making sure that nation does not get nuclear weapons, at least that we don't help them, that's somehow dangerous. That's somehow destabilizing. It's the exact opposite. The United States is once again reasserting itself as the moral authority, the beacon of freedom and liberty, and that we're not going to take a back seat to anybody because we don't anymore harbor any guilt over our existence. And we don't feel like we have to apologize to anybody else around the world for what we have become, because we are good and we are decent. We are the good guys. It's that simple. That's what has happened here. This used to be the standard order of the day in this country. This used to be the thing that united all of us. This used to be the element of our existence that formed a common bond that all Americans had, whether they were Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Communists, Pinkos, whatever. There was something that united us. It was America was great. We were all on the same team. That hasn't been the case for decades now with the ascension of the radical left in the Democrat Party and throughout countless American institutions. We are not breaking our word. We have not broken a promise. The United States did not make a promise to Iran. The United States did not make a promise to the world. Barack Obama did. And it was a promise that he could not keep, because Barack Obama did not use the tools of the Constitution in order to have this arrangement with Iran ratified. You know why he didn't? I repeat again, he never had the votes in the Senate for ratification. Hillary Clinton tweeted, and again, I really think anything written by this woman after 9 p.m. should come with a breathalyzer reading. Pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal is a big mistake. It makes America less safe and less trusted. Iran is now more dangerous. What's plan B? Anyone who thinks bombing is the answer is woefully misinformed. No, Mrs. Clinton, the big mistake was short-circuiting the treaty process. Obama's deal, which Israel kind of proved here, was total BS, and it made us less safe. It made the world less safe. It is Iran that is less trusted, Mrs. Clinton, not the United States. You know, people in this country, Mrs. Clinton, are tired of people like you and President Clinton thinking that we have everything in the world to apologize for, that we're the problem in the world. Our people do not think this. And it grew very tiresome. It grew very old to continue to listen to people like you running around the world apologizing for whatever grievances you think the United States had visited on people of the world. Let me take a brief time out. I want to review how this whole Iran thing happened under Obama when we get back. I'm also going to check the phones, maybe go there first. I'll see. Take a look at everything during the break. Back and continue right after this. Hi, welcome back. El Rushbo, executing assigned host duties flawlessly. This Iran deal, folks, was even less than they were lying to us about it. Let me explain. I have here a printed page from a website called Human Rights Voices, but it actually reprints something that was sent to then Congressional Representative Mike Pompeo. And it was seen by our buddies at National Review. Now, the date of this is November 24th of 2015. Donald Trump just came down the escalator, 6 months prior. I mean, the presidential campaign is barely underway. November 24th, 2015, headline, State Department, Iran deal is not legally binding, and Iran didn't sign it. When I saw this, I remembered this, too. Quote, President Obama did not require Iranian leaders to sign the nuclear deal that his team negotiated with the regime, and the deal is not legally binding. His administration acknowledged in a letter to Republican Representative Mike Pompeo from Kansas. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, that's what the Iran deal is called, the JCPOA, is not a treaty. It is not an executive agreement. It is not a signed document, wrote Julia Freifield, the State Department Assistant Secretary for Legislative Affairs, in the letter dated November 19th. The Obama State Department admitted in a letter to then Congressman Mike Pompeo that the Obama deal is not a treaty, it is not an executive agreement, and it is not a signed document. The Iranians were not required to sign this. Now, Freifield wrote this letter in response to a letter that Pompeo sent John Kerry, in which he observed that the deal that the president had submitted to Congress wasn't even signed. Pompeo wondered if the Obama administration had given lawmakers the final agreement. Freifield's response to Pompeo emphasizes that Congress did receive the final version of the deal, but by characterizing it as a set of political commitments rather than a more formal agreement, it is sure to heighten congressional concerns that Iran might violate the deal's terms. There isn't a deal. Iran can't violate because they never signed it. Therefore, technically, they're incapable of violating. This is just a set of political documents put forth by Obama, never ratified by the Senate, not signed by the Iranians. Again, I want to read to you from Julia Freifield of the State Department. She's the Assistant Secretary for Legislative Affairs, November 19th, 2015, in the Obama State Department. The JCPOA, the Iran deal, is not a treaty. It's not an executive agreement. It is not a signed document. It was the final document. She wrote this letter in response to a letter Pompeo sent Secretary Kerry, in which he observed a deal the president had submitted to Congress wasn't signed. So Pompeo sit there in Congress, they get this deal, it's the Iran deal. They're supposed to look at it. Obama wants him to sign on to it. Some people know, wait a minute, it's not even signed. State Department, yes, that's true. It's not a treaty. It's not an executive agreement. It was nothing more than a set of political commitments. This is community organizing in action, is basically what this is. Obama spells out some things that he wants to do with Iran, some things he wants to do for Iran. Calls it a deal to limit Iran. If Iran didn't sign this, how the hell can they be held accountable in the pursuit of nuclear weapons, nuclear electric grid, nuclear... How can they be held accountable when they didn't even sign it? It's a nothing. And right there playing along with this is the drive-by media, which is going to be the next aspect of my little trip down memory lane and reminding you how we got here. There's even more information from this story. The president in Iran, Hassan Rouhani, discouraged the Iranian parliament from voting on the nuclear deal in order to avoid placing legal burdens on the Iranian regime. In August of 2015, Rouhani said, if the deal is sent to Parliament and passed by Parliament, it'll create an obligation for our government. It'll mean the president, who has not signed it, will have to sign it. Why should we place an unnecessary legal restriction on the Iranian people? He wasn't going to sign it. They didn't. It's an Iranian deal that is a list of political achievements, objectives by Obama that doesn't even have an Iranian signature. It's not even a deal. They even call this a deal. So all Trump has done is withdraw whatever commitments Barack Obama personally made to the nation of Iran. That's all that has happened here. And we'll be back. Don't go away. Up next, the John Podhoretz piece. A never-Trumper, by the way, but this piece was written in May of 2016. So we're in the full throes of the campaign, but Trump has been elected. Nobody thinks Trump's going to win when this is written. So it has nothing to do with Trump. Headline, White House admits it played us for fools to sell Iran deal. Now, as you listen to this when we get back in the next hour, keep in mind there isn't any Iran deal, and the Iranians never signed whatever this mess is. We'll be back. Anyway, greetings. Greetings and welcome back. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh here behind the golden EIB microphone. I apologize for not getting to your phone calls in the first hour. Of course, I'm going to rectify that. But I want to continue with this Iranian business and get this wrapped up because there's lots of other stuff I want to get to, and people want to weigh in on this themselves on the phones. So we have established that there wasn't even a deal. The Iranians never did sign this. It was Barack Obama's personal policy preferences toward Iran that, folks, this is the meat and potatoes. This is coming up next. Because I guarantee you, I would bet over 80% of you are shocked to learn that the Iranians never signed it, that it wasn't a treaty, that it isn't even really a deal. It's nothing more than what Obama wanted to do with American foreign policy in Iran, for which he never had the votes. The Iranians never signed it. It has never been binding, except to the extent that nobody would oppose it. But it's never had the force of constitutional law behind it. It's no different than how Obama got away with so much during his presidency. Nobody had the guts to stop him. If you've got a document, statutes say this is what you can't do, and somebody keeps violating them, if nobody's going to stop you, you keep doing it. And nobody was going to stop Obama because he was the first African-American president. He was the chosen one for the American left, the Democrat Party. There was not a soul that was going to stand up to him. There was not a soul that was going to stop him. They knew that the full wrath of the drive-by media would rain down upon them, so Obama had a free rein. That's the only way this was allowed to happen, is nobody had the guts to stop it. Even Republicans, remember the Corker deal, to try to make this look legit, the media made it look legit, and that's the real story of this. How did this even happen? How does something that is nothing more than one man's personal policy preferences toward Iran get presented to the American people as a treaty-like official U.S. policy that has as its number one objective keeping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, when in fact it does just the opposite? It permits the Iranians getting a nuclear weapon. It commits the United States to defending Iran if they're ever attacked, even by the Israelis. And they got $150 billion in cash from Obama, State Department, the Treasury. And this whole thing was presented to the American people as a serious constitutional treaty that represented an official United States agreement with the government of Iran, with several allied nations as signatories, i.e., our European allies. This was nothing but another scam, folks. And the scam was pulled off by way of an alliance between the Obama intelligence people, that would be the CIA, the DIA, the NSA, all the people that ran these agencies that were Obama acolytes, and the media as willing accomplices in furthering the misconception about this. So first, as a reminder, John Podoretz, May 5th, 2016, headline, White House admits it played us for fools to sell Iran deal. Begins this way. Congratulations, liberals of the Washington Press Corps and elite organizations. You're a bunch of suckers. We all know this because the Obama White House just told us so. In an astounding New York Times story by David Samuels, the senior White House officials gleefully confess that they use friendly reporters and nonprofits as PR tools in selling Obama's foreign policy. And they can do it almost at will because these tools are ignorant. They will believe what they're told. They will essentially take dictation and are happy to be used just to get the information necessary for a tweet or two. Now, Podhoretz, he knows it, but he, at this point of the time of his writing, is not yet aware of how deep this web of deceit sinks between Obama and the media and all of these nonprofits. He gets a heads up on it from the piece in the New York Times by David Samuels. And in this piece, White House officials, they can't contain themselves. They confess how they used reporters and nonprofits as PR tools, and they admitted how they can do it anytime they want because the reporters are a bunch of sycophants. And as you'll hear, Ben Rhodes, who is Obama's foreign policy kid at the time, was talking about how easy it was to fool the media. They're just basically a bunch of ignorant 27-year-olds who'll do anything to be close to us. The greatest triumph, according to David Samuels in the New York Times, was selling a misleading narrative about the nuclear deal with Iran, the parameters of which were set a year before the administration claimed, and which had nothing to do with the fact that a supposedly more accommodating government had risen to power. In other words, I'm sure you remember this. One of the things they used to sell us on the deal was the Iranians had a new government made up of a bunch of moderates. And the new leader, this Rouhani guy, he was a moderate. We can do a deal with this guy. John Kerry's all over the place saying so. Obama is. But they weren't moderates. There aren't any moderates that are alive in the Iranian regime. The mastermind of the Obama machine, Ben Rhodes, a New Yorker who joined the Obama campaign as a speechwriter in 2007 and has risen to become the most influential foreign policy hand in the White House. Rhodes drips with contempt for almost everybody but his boss. He consigns all of those who do not share every particular of the Obama-Rhodes foreign policy perspective to a mass called the blob, including Hillary Clinton. Samuels thinks everybody out there in the media, the nonprofits, anywhere that don't agree with him and Obama foreign policy, they are the blob. He thinks as little of them as he does of the journalists he and his team have to spoon feed. Rhodes says the average reporter we talk to is 27. Their only reporting experience consists of being around political campaigns. They literally know nothing. And then there are others that his assistant Ned Price refers to as force multipliers, more senior reporters and pundits who parrot what they're told. I'll give them some color, Price says, using the journalistic term for juicy bits of detail. The next thing I know, lots of these guys are in the .com publishing space. They have huge Twitter followings, and they're putting this message out as their own, as though they thought it up when all they're doing is repeating what we told them. A foreign policy reporter named Laura Rosen, the most credulous conveyor of pro-Iran deal news last year, is given a specific shout-out by White House digital guru Tanya Somanader. Laura Rosen was my RSS feed, she says. She would just find everything we wanted and retweet it. It could only work if water carriers did the White House's job for it. Nonprofit water carriers did their faithful duty. Rhodes tells the New York Times we created an echo chamber. Journalists and think tankers discussing the Iran deal based almost entirely on information we told them. They were saying things that validated what we had given them to say. This is exactly what Lee Smith dug up at thetablet.com. It is this operation that Podhoretz is writing about that I'm sharing with you here. It is this operation that ended up being the trial run for Obama using the intelligence community to basically write whatever they wanted written about Trump and Russia and collusion. When they found out how easy it was to plant total BS with the media and have them write it without even trying to verify it about the Iran deal, they figured they had these people in the palm of their hands. This was the proving ground. 2015, 2016, this was what was in place when it was time to enact the Trump-Russia collusion operation, featuring endless leaks from intelligence people to the media, unverified, uncorroborated. Media didn't check anything, just printed it, continue to do those things to this day. And when the Obama administration found out how easy this was, because these reporters on average are 27 years old and don't know anything, plus he knows they're all sycophants. These reporters love Obama. These reporters want to be thought of in great ways by Obama. These reporters want Obama to know them. They want to be on Obama's mind. These reporters want Obama to be thinking of them. So they're a bunch of sycophants and suck-ups, and they were printing whatever Rhodes and the State Department gave them about the Iran deal. And that's how you ended up thinking that it was a big deal, that it was going to stop the Iranians from getting nuclear weapons, that the European allies had signed onto it, that the Iranians had signed onto it. It's nothing but a gigantic scam. It worked so well that Ben Rhodes and people in the Obama administration could not stop bragging about how easily it was to execute to the New York Times. Back in just a moment. Folks, we're not only going to have the Podorets piece at RushLimbaugh.com, we're going to find the New York piece that he actually wrote his column on. It's the piece by David Samuels, New York Times, somewhere between April 29th and May 3rd of 2016. We're going to find that original link because it's in the New York Times. The Obama administration people are bragging about how easy it was to use the media and a bunch of nonprofits to lie to the American people. That the media people were so young, so ignorant, so desirous of being close to the administration, they'd print anything. It's an amazing piece of hubris. I mean, this is the kind of thing you would normally never admit. But they were so proud of themselves, they could not stop bragging about it. And the New York Times thought they were brilliant, too. New York Times, part of the group that was fooled, but they didn't care because anything for Obama, anything for Obama, whatever we want, anything for Obama. Where'd Obama get the $150 million, by the way? Where did he get that money? Congress didn't authorize it. That $150 billion he puts on the tarmac at Tehran, where did he get it? Where did he get the cash in addition to $150 billion? Where did he get this? Congress didn't authorize it. Where did it come from? Well, wherever he wanted it to come from, because nobody was going to stop it. Okay, let's get started on the phones. I still have some stuff to add to this Iran deal, but the crux of it you have. We're going to go to Erie, Pennsylvania. It's Kurt, great to have you, sir. Hi.
Mega Dittos, Rush. You opened up the show today asking the question, what could John Kerry and possibly Clinton and Obama have personally invested in this whole Iran deal? And then just before this commercial, you alluded to what I think has a big part of their concern is that large pallet of untraceable cash that was totally unauthorized by anybody in the outside of the executive branch of the government. And I think that, we've all heard the stories, most of them probably true, of all the money that's been funneled into the Clinton Foundation and various other liberal causes, and I have no doubt that that was probably part of it.
Well, get this. You've reminded me of something. The Obama stimulus, was essentially a Democrat Party money laundering operation. Do you realize that not all of it has even been spent? That's part of what the Trump administration wants to include in their rescission of $15 billion, not spend $15 billion that has been authorized. And part of that money is coming from Obama's stimulus. Anyway, as to your idea that some of this money is going to end up coming back, to people like Kerry. I have no idea. It could be Kerry doesn't need any money, especially he doesn't need to be entrapped with any illegal money because his wife has more money than Kerry could spend on ocean kites. And as for Hillary, she's not in this cabal, strangely enough. Obama, I don't know. I don't think this is the answer. I don't blame you for thinking it. And I may be asking a question that is irrelevant, because I'm just judging. I'm just looking at the reaction all these people are having as though some major slight has occurred here that is really going to imperil the United States. They're all acting like, of all the things Trump has done, this we can't abide. This is the most irresponsible. This is the most... And there's not even a deal. The Iranians never signed anything. Then there is this $150 billion that the Iranians were given, and a lot of it was unmarked cash flown on a U.S. airplane landing at the airport in Tehran. It was on pallets. It was offloaded. It was said to be payments for the release of American hostages, a few, I think 8, that the Iranians were holding. But my point is they're acting like this is more than just a blemish on their resume. So it's got me curious. What are they afraid of? What are they so concerned about with this thing? And maybe it is nothing more than a blemish on their resume. Remember, these people are totally devoted to the establishment and maintenance of reputations within their little cliques inside the establishment. Anyway, Kurt, I'm glad you called. Another brief timeout. We'll be back and continue before you know it. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every busy broadcast day. I am your highly trained, deeply, instinctively talented broadcast host, Rush Limbaugh, at 800-282-2882. We're going to go back even further into the archives. I have here yet another New York Post story. Ruth Brown and Danica Fears. This is December 18th, 2017. Obama protected Hezbollah drug ring to save Iran nukes deal. Do you remember this? Now, this whole deal, shockingly irresponsible, dangerous, a masterwork of deception. The Obama administration, now reading from the story. Oh, by the way, we have put Podhoretz and the original New York Times story there on the ticker at rushlimbaugh.com on the website and the rushlimbaugh.com app. We are now able to post things instantaneously. Transcripts of things I say takes a little bit longer, but they get up very quickly now rather than having to wait by 5 or 6 o'clock every day. But back to this New York Post story. The Obama administration stymied a sprawling investigation into Hezbollah and its highly lucrative drug trafficking networks to protect the Iran nuclear deal, according to a bombshell report. A team, remember this is last December, a team at the Drug Enforcement Administration had been working for almost a decade to bring down Hezbollah and their sophisticated $1 billion a year drug ring, which laundered money and smuggled cocaine into the United States. This was all in Politico, by the way. But the Departments of Justice and Treasury, that would be the Obama Justice Department, Treasury Department, repeatedly undermined the efforts of agents to arrest and prosecute key members of the criminal network because the Obama White House feared upsetting Iran ahead of the nuclear agreement. All of this is in Politico, and it's repeated and reported in the New York Post. So everywhere you look at this deal, it was a gigantic deception and a scam. And all it is Barack Obama's personal policy preferences regarding America's relationship with Iran. Now we need to find out what made Iran so important to Barack Obama that all of this deceit would be entered into in order to construct a quote-unquote deal the American people were told would prevent the Iranians from getting a nuclear weapon. What was really the purpose of this? Why was this so important to Obama? We know now why he didn't submit this for ratification. We know why this was not treated as a treaty. It would have never passed the smell test. And what do you think these allies like the UK and France and Germany, do you think they knew from the get-go that this was as phony baloney as it is? Or did they think that this was a legitimate deal that the Iranians were going to sign and abide by? Could they have been that stupid? Could they have been that fooled as the American people were and as the American media was? I don't know, Mr. Sturdley, but I think they knew about it all along because they're in on whatever this deal is promising to people who want something out of it. And this is why they can't pull out of it. They've got to act like it's still important, it's still relevant. They can't pull out of it. They would look like fools to pull out of this now, because they would have to admit everything that I've just shared with you about what this is. And they're not doing that. Everybody's on the same page. This is imperiling the world. This has made the world more dangerous. This has made the United States less trustworthy. This has made the United States unreliable. What an ever-loving crock. What's really happened here is that all these people in Iran and the Middle East have once again learned that we're not a patsy and we're not led by a bunch of fools and idiots. It's mind-boggling. People say that, use that phrase to the point of it having become a cliche, but this genuinely boggles the mind. Let me go back to the phones. This is Dustin in Hopewell, New Jersey. Great to have you, Dustin. How are you doing? I want to remember one thing about this Iran deal. In talking about the Europeans, the French, the Brits, the Germans, and even Americans, the reason that they were all in on this and all for it had nothing to do with nuclear weapons, yes or no. Had nothing to do with anything other than sanctions were going to be dropped on Iran, which meant the Iranian market was opening up. And at the time, the Iranian national airline was in a decrepit state. Their airplanes, their aircraft were grounded. They had not very many that were airworthy. It was in a disastrous state. One of the reasons that Boeing signed on as a signatory to the deal was they wanted a shot at selling jets to Iran. That's one of the reasons the Iranians were given the $150 billion by Obama. They were tied to Obama's donors. Obama sends $150 billion to Iran. Iran, John Kerry admitted some of the money is going to fund terrorism. We can't deny that. He said, yeah, we're going to be funding Hezbollah, Hamas, Syria. So, yep. But there's going to be good that's done with this money. Russia was going to get repaid things the Iranians owed them, but they were going to have to start investing in their own infrastructure because sanctions had killed them. So the French and the UK, they were all in on this because they had Airbus. Everybody wanted to sell the Iranians aircraft. Everybody wanted to sell the Iranians everything. And here's $150 billion. Now to you and me, as Americans, measured against our entire annual budget, that's a drop in the bucket. But it's big money to a country that's had worldwide sanctions placed on them for many months prior. So it's kind of I mentioned the stimulus. Obama comes up with a stimulus package here that everybody thinks is designed to rebuild the American infrastructure. It wasn't. It was a way to get money actually back to the Democrat Party. Now, I know what? You're saying, what? It works this way. The Democrat Party cannot just walk across the street to the U.S. Treasury and write a check for cash for $1 trillion or for $900 billion. They just can't. So what Obama did was come up with a stimulus bill. Nobody was going to deny it. His first major initiative after being inaugurated, first African-American president. It's going to save America. It's going to rebuild schools and roads and bridges and all of this. And everybody was just hot to trot. Everybody wanted to be seen helping the first African-American president. So it got signed like a hot knife through butter. But where did the money go? We came to find out that most of the money went to unions. Some of it went to lay the groundwork for Obamacare exchanges, but even that money went to Democrat operatives. There was a recession. A lot of people were losing their jobs. A lot of the stimulus money went, in Wisconsin, it went to the teachers' unions, for example, and it kept them employed. Now, what happens with unions? Unions collect dues, and a percentage of the dues gets sent back to the Democrat Party as campaign donations. Quite a lot, in fact. And so what percentage of the $700 billion of the stimulus actually ended up back to the Democrat Party in the form of campaign contributions? It's not an insignificant number. But I can tell you this, there weren't any roads rebuilt, there weren't any bridges rebuilt, there weren't any new schools. Did you see any of that happen after the stimulus? You didn't. So here we have this $150 billion. Well, its purpose, we're now treating Iran as an adult. We're going to remove sanctions. Iran is to be rewarded for pledging not to go nuclear here. This is how we're being lied to. That's what this thing is supposedly going to accomplish. And part of the reward was that Iran was going to get, in addition to sanctions lifted, $150 billion. We were showing, Obama was showing his good faith. We're going to reward you for your promise, wink, wink, not to build any nuclear missiles, weapons, warheads, what have you. And lined up right after the sanctions were lifted and the $150 billion was delivered were a bunch of Obama donors who were then eager to do business in Iran. It had been a frozen market because of sanctions. They needed big ticket stuff like airplanes, stuff for their domestic transportation. Look, it's a backward place in many ways because so much of the money goes to fund criminal activity, terrorism. So this was an infusion that Iran would never be able to generate on its own. And that's why the Europeans were all in, because the Iranian market was open to them. Now, none of this that I have just told you, and I've told you this when it was happening too, but none of this was ever explained to the American people as part of the deal. This is what was not explained. This is stuff you were not told. And this is why Ben Rhodes could not stop bragging to the New York Times how easy it was to lie to the media and the American people, how easy it was to parlay their ignorance. So that is where we are. And remember, this entire scam ended up being a trial run in terms of using the intelligence community and a new alliance with the media to advance the Obama or Democrat Party agenda. They saw how successfully it worked in advancing the Iran deal, that the same strategies were used in implementing the so-called investigation into Donald Trump. All of these leaks from intelligence people every day for a year in every newspaper and cable news network. Sources from the American intelligence community, former government officials, so forth. It was Obama administration people lying to the media accepting it without question and printing it. It worked in Iran, and they think it worked here. Back in a sec.